Got some killer Chuck Berry-like lyrics on this record, coming in at number 43 on Billboard's Hot 100, August 6, 1977. Rock and Roll Never Forgets by Bob Seger. It took a huge leap that week, too, from 55 to 43. It looked like this song was going to be a big hit that summer. As a matter of fact, I thought, man, this is going to be another big Bob Seger hit, because he came out with that album, Night Moves. That was a big comeback album for Bob Seger. And there was Night Moves. That was in the winter of 76, 77. Then there was Main Street, The Plaintiff, The Melancholy. God, it was so sad listening to this record. Main Street back in the spring of 1977, Song of Complete Longing. And then he came back rocking, this happy-go-lucky rocker. Rock and Roll Never Forgets. Consider this song a precursor to old-time rock and roll, which came out a couple of years later. The song only peaked at number 41 on Billboard's Hot 100. On Billboard's Hot 100 for 8 weeks. That's it. And it died. I don't know why. I just can't explain it. One of his best rock and roll records. He came out with some good ones. There was Ramble, Gambling Man back in 68, 69, Lucifer in 1970, Catmandu in 1975, and now we got Rock and Roll Never Forgets. Even Now was another good one he did. That was back in 1983, and Rock and Roll Never Forgets. I just found out the album Night Moves credited to Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band, but on 4 of the 9 tracks, Bob Seger was backed by the Muscle Shoals rhythm section. Alabama kicking in again. That's right, Alabama Get Away. Roll Tide. Backed by the Muscle Shoals rhythm section as opposed to the Silver Bullet Band. That's right. One rock critic from Rolling Stone magazine described Bob Seger as somebody who sounds like Rod Stewart and writes like Bruce Springsteen. That sounds aptly put right there. Rock and Roll Never Forgets takes aim at the older. I don't know how to say this. I can't put my mind around this. You know, if I stood in front of somebody and tried to explain it, I'll still have a hard time with it. Basically, he's aiming it at the aging rock and roll fans. And I hate to use the word aging, because in 1977, you're talking about people in their late 20s and early 30s. He's aiming this song at people who grew up in the 50s and 60s, who listen to Elvis, who listen to the Beatles, who listen to the Rolling Stones. But by 1977, they're not into Foreigner. They're not into Boston. They're not into Kansas. Wayne Newton, they're probably into Wayne Newton, but not into Kansas. And that's what happens. I've noticed this generation after generation after generation. When somebody hits the magic age is 23, 22, 23, 24. That's when somebody says, I can't get into this music. I can't get into this new music. I'm just going to stick with the music I grew up with when I was a teenager. Because the music that's coming out now does not measure up to the music I grew up with when I was a teenager. Every generation says that. I guarantee you. Doesn't matter if you grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. I have noticed this. Believe me, I have. I'm 57 years old. I'm old enough to have noticed this generational thing takes place. Well, one generation after another. And that's what happened. Somebody who's 27 years old in 1977 is saying, man, I love the Beatles, I love the Stones, but my God, man, Foreigner, this new music just doesn't have it. Every generation says that. Well, I might like a couple of ABBA songs, but I can't get into this hard stuff anymore. Give me the Beatles and the Stones. Give me Elvis, baby. That's what Bob Seger's saying. Give me your kids. Rock and Roll Never Forgets. If you can't get into it, then hey, bring your kids into it. Well, that's my interpretation of it. Actually, I think I read about that in Crawdaddy magazine. Remember Crawdaddy magazine? God, we're really talking about back in the day. Well, here's Bob Seger, Rock and Roll Never Forgets, at number 43, Billboard's Hot 100 of August 6, 1977.